When someone challenges you, the reflex most people have is to push back. That's human nature. But human nature is predictable, and predictable is easy to control. If you want to win, you can't give them the reaction they're expecting. The moment you do, you're already inside their plan. The smarter move is to pause, hold your position, and let them think they've got the upper hand. People get careless when they believe they've already won, and that's when they start making mistakes you can use. The real advantage comes from watching more than you speak. Most people are too busy defending themselves to notice what's right in front of them. Every word, every shift in body language, every small crack in their tone, it's information, and information is power. When you're silent, you're collecting pieces of a puzzle they don't even know they're giving you. Let them talk themselves into revealing exactly what they're afraid of, what they want, and where they're weak. You can't see these things if you're too busy reacting. You also have to change the game without announcing it. If you meet someone on their terms, you're stepping onto their battlefield and they've already set the traps. Instead, shift the terrain, redirect the conversation, alter the pace, and pull them toward a place where you have the advantage. It's not about overpowering them, it's about guiding them so smoothly they don't realize they're being led until it's too late. That's the beauty of strategy. They feel like they're in control right up until the moment they're not. Composure is one of the sharpest tools you can carry. When someone is coming at you with aggression, they expect you to match it. They expect you to raise your voice, lose your cool, and give them something they can feed off. But when you stay calm to the point it unnerves them, you throw their rhythm off. Your steadiness becomes a mirror, and in that mirror they start to see their own instability. This alone can make them back off, because most people aren't prepared to fight someone who doesn't react the way they expect. Timing is everything. Acting too soon is as dangerous as acting too late. The right moment to strike, verbally, strategically, or even physically, comes when the odds are already stacked in your favor. That's the reward for patience. You've read them, guided them, stayed composed, and waited until the exact point when they've exposed themselves completely. Then you move, not with emotion, not with desperation, but with precision. Because in the end, the person who waits and chooses the moment controls the outcome. And that's the difference between simply fighting and truly winning. When someone comes at you, whether it's with words, aggression, or manipulation, your first instinct might be to respond right away. That's the natural reflex. To defend yourself, to prove you're not weak, to show them you can stand your ground. But here's the thing, that's exactly what they're hoping you'll do. People who want to provoke you aren't looking for truth or resolution. They're looking for a reaction. And the moment you react the way they expect, you've stepped right into the role they wrote for you. You've given them control without even realizing it. Control in any confrontation is about who dictates the terms. If they can make you move when they want you to move, speak when they want you to speak, or think about what they want you to think about, they've already won half the battle before it even begins. That's why the most powerful thing you can do in that moment isn't to strike back, it's to pause. That pause is everything. It breaks the rhythm they're trying to set. It takes you out of their script. It buys you the space to think instead of react. And in that space, you can start to see the whole board instead of just the piece they're trying to push in front of you. This pause doesn't mean freezing in fear or doing nothing out of weakness. It's a calculated stillness. Think of it like holding your fire until you can see the whites of the enemy's eyes. You're not ignoring the situation. You're studying it. You're letting them reveal more of themselves than they realize. In fact, most people can't help themselves. When they think they've got you on the ropes, they loosen up, they talk more, they move differently, they take bigger risks, and in doing so, they show you the gaps in their armor. There's also a psychological element at play here. People expect immediate resistance. When they push, they anticipate you'll push back with equal force. It's how they measure their own strength. But when that push is met with stillness, with no immediate reaction, it creates uncertainty. They start questioning if they've underestimated you or if you know something they don't. That doubt can be more powerful than any words you could throw at them in the heat of the moment. Think about high-stakes negotiations, whether in business, politics, or security. The people who win those moments aren't the ones who rush to respond to every jab or demand. They're the ones who can hold their silence, keep a steady expression, and let the other side talk themselves into a corner. The silence is not passive, it's active. It's a weapon. And it works because people are uncomfortable with uncertainty. They'll fill that silence with explanations, justifications, or even admissions they never planned to give. Now, this doesn't just apply to hostile situations. It works in everyday life too. Someone criticizes you at work. Instead of instantly defending yourself, pause, look them in the eye, and let the weight of their words sit there. Often, they'll start to soften or clarify what they said because the quiet is pressing on them harder than your defense would. Someone tries to manipulate you in a relationship. Don't argue. Don't beg. Let them think their tactic is landing, and in that space, decide the best way to turn it back on them. The key is discipline. It's not easy to hold still when adrenaline is pumping and your pride is on the line. Your ego wants to swing back immediately. But ego is exactly what gets people trapped. They rush to prove themselves instead of letting the other person prove who they are first. When you can override that impulse and hold the pause, you gain a level of control that most people will never reach. And remember, this isn't about letting someone walk over you. It's about flipping the dynamic so you're the one setting the pace. You're no longer reacting to their moves, you're dictating when and how the next move happens. You're forcing them to operate in the dark, not knowing what you're thinking, not knowing if they've hit their target, and that uncertainty starts to work against them. Over time, this habit of not rushing to fight back becomes second nature. You'll find that people provoke you the way they can provoke others because you've trained yourself to operate on your terms, not theirs. They might win quick skirmishes against others who bite at the bait, but with you, they'll feel like they're shadowboxing, throwing punches into empty air while you stand calm, reading every angle, waiting for the exact moment to move. And when you do move, it won't be reactive, it'll be decisive, deliberate, and on your terms. Most people go into a confrontation thinking about what they're going to say next, not about what they're going to learn. They're focused on delivering their argument, proving their point, or defending themselves. And that's exactly why they miss everything that matters. The real power in any tense exchange isn't in the words you throw back, it's in the information you gather while the other person is busy revealing themselves. That's why watching more than you speak is such an advantage. It shifts you from being the hunted to being the hunter, from playing defense to building a winning position without them even noticing. When you're quiet, you create a space most people feel compelled to fill. Silence makes people uncomfortable, especially in moments of tension. They start talking to fill the void, and in doing so, they give away more than they realize. It might be a small change in their tone, a hesitation before answering, or even a contradiction in their own story. These tiny cracks are openings, and if you're paying attention, you can slip right through them. But you'll never catch those details if you're talking over them or rushing to respond. Think about it like this in poker. The best players aren't the ones with the flashiest bluffs. They're the ones who can read a table. They study every twitch, every nervous laugh, every glance at the chips. They're gathering a map of their opponent's mindset without saying a word. And when the moment comes, they make their move with precision because they've already done the work silently. In a confrontation, the same principle applies. Every second you spend observing is a second you're arming yourself with the truth about the person across from you. Body language is a huge part of this. Words can be crafted and manipulated, but the body almost always tells the truth. A clenched jaw can signal anger they're trying to hide. Shifting eyes might reveal discomfort or dishonesty. A change in breathing can indicate fear or anxiety. When you watch closely, you start to see patterns. What topics make them tense, what questions make them deflect, and what situations make them lose control. All of this becomes ammunition for when you decide to take action. It's not just about spotting weakness. It's also about understanding intent. Sometimes the person coming at you isn't even fully aware of their own motives. They may think they're angry about one thing when the real issue is something deeper. By listening more than speaking, you can uncover the real driver behind their behavior. And once you understand that, you can respond in a way that directly addresses the root, not just the surface level noise. That's how you gain control without a fight. This approach also keeps your emotions in check. When you're speaking constantly in a tense moment, you're more likely to let your emotions leak into your words. You might say something you regret or reveal more about your position than you intended. But when you listen, you stay in control of your image. You give nothing away while collecting everything they're offering, sometimes without even realizing they're doing it. A critical part of this tactic is asking the right questions and then shutting up. The pause after a question is often where the truth slips out. People feel a need to respond quickly, and in their rush to fill the silence, they might reveal inconsistencies or details you weren't supposed to know. The fewer words you use, the more theirs stand out, and the more they have to live with what they've said. In high-stress environments, whether that's an interrogation room, a negotiation table, or even a personal argument, those who control the flow of information control the outcome. Speaking less is how you tilt the balance. You turn yourself into a mirror, reflecting their own behavior back to them, forcing them to see their own tells and vulnerabilities. And the best part is, they often don't realize you've been guiding the interaction until it's already over. Over time, this skill becomes second nature. You start walking into situations with a completely different mindset. Instead of thinking, how do I win this argument right now? You think, what can I learn in the next 5 minutes that will let me win this in the long run? And the longer you play that game, the more you realize that the loudest person in the room rarely holds the most power. The one who sees the most does. And when you see more than they do, you can outmaneuver them without ever raising your voice. Most people lose before they even realize the game has started, and it's because they let someone else choose the battlefield. When you engage on the other person's terms, you're stepping into a space they've already prepared for themselves. They know the angles, the language, the pace, and the rules. All of that works in their favor. That's why one of the smartest things you can do is refuse to fight where they're strongest. Instead, you quietly change the game. You shift the terrain so they're no longer standing on solid ground, and they don't even realize it's happening until they're already off balance. Changing the game doesn't always mean flipping the entire situation upside down in an obvious way. In fact, the most effective shifts are subtle. They happen under the surface without drawing attention. If someone comes at you aggressively in public, they expect you to defend yourself in front of an audience. That's their home turf. Instead of meeting them there, you might pull the conversation into private, where the social pressure on you disappears and the attention shifts to their behavior. Now the playing field is different. They've lost the advantage of performance, and you've taken control of the setting. Sometimes shifting the game is about pace. If someone is trying to pressure you into making a fast decision or reacting immediately, slow everything down. Deliberate pauses can feel like a speed bump to someone who's used to controlling the tempo. They'll either get impatient and make a mistake or start adjusting to your pace. Either way, you're no longer in their rhythm, you're in yours. The moment you control the pace, you're dictating how and when the next moves happen. Another way to change the game is through framing. In arguments or negotiations, people often try to trap you inside a narrative that benefits them. They set up the situation in a way where your choices seem limited, but you can quietly reframe the conversation so that the focus shifts entirely. For example, if someone tries to corner you with blame, you can redirect by focusing on solutions or alternative angles they didn't anticipate. The topic is now moving away from their chosen path and toward one you've designed. This approach works because people rely heavily on predictability. If they can predict how you'll react, they can plan for it. But the moment you change the terrain, alter the pace, move the conversation, reframe the topic, you break their script. Now they're improvising, and most people aren't as strong when they're off script. They reveal weaknesses, they make emotional decisions, and they lose the calculated edge they thought they had. In practice, this requires awareness and patience. You have to be able to recognize when you're being drawn into someone else's game, and that means stepping back mentally before engaging. Ask yourself, whose terms am I about to fight on? If the answer isn't yours, your first move should be to quietly shift the environment until it is. That shift can be physical, changing the location or the setting. It can be psychological, changing the pace or tone. It can even be strategic, changing the subject or redefining the stakes. One of the most powerful aspects of changing the game is that it doesn't have to look like you're fighting at all. In fact, the best shifts often look like cooperation. You can agree to talk, agree to meet, agree to engage, while all the while steering things toward conditions that favor you. The other person often doesn't realize they've been led there, which makes their guard drop even further. If you think about the most successful tacticians, whether in law enforcement, business, sports, or personal relationships, they rarely win by brute force alone. They win because they control the field of play. They don't get lured into taking shots they're not ready for, and they don't stand in spots where they can't see what's coming. They set up the environment so that every move the other side makes feeds into their advantage. Once you make this way of thinking a habit, you start to notice how often people try to pull you into situations that benefit them. You also start noticing how quickly their confidence fades when the ground shifts beneath them. And the beauty of this tactic is that you don't have to announce you're doing it. The less they realize the game has changed, the more effective it is. By the time they figure it out, you're already several moves ahead, and the fight they thought they were winning has quietly turned into one they can't win at all. Composure is one of the most underestimated forms of power. When someone comes at you expecting a fight, they're ready for noise, chaos, and resistance. They're braced for shouting, fast movements, maybe even a visible display of anger. They've rehearsed how they'll respond to that energy because it's predictable. But when you don't give them that, when you stay calm, steady, and almost unnervingly still, you disrupt their plan. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability makes people uneasy. Remaining composed in the face of provocation does more than keep you from making rash decisions. It flips the psychological balance. Aggression feeds on reaction. When someone lashes out, they're often trying to pull you into their emotional state so they can control the exchange. If they can get you angry, flustered, or defensive, they've successfully dictated the terms of the encounter. But when you refuse to meet them there, when your tone stays level and your movements stay deliberate, you starve that aggression of its fuel. It's like trying to light a fire in the rain. It just doesn't catch. This doesn't mean you're passive. Calm is not the absence of strength, it's the control of it. It's the ability to keep your power contained until you choose to use it. People mistake composure for softness, but in reality, it's one of the hardest things to maintain under pressure. It takes discipline to keep your face neutral when someone is trying to provoke you. It takes training to slow your breathing when adrenaline is telling you to speed it up. And it takes awareness to recognize that the moment you lose your cool, you've given them a way to manipulate you. One of the most immediate effects of staying composed is the shift it causes in the other person. If they expect you to get heated and you don't, it throws them off balance. They start to wonder if they've misjudged you, if you know something they don't, or if their tactics aren't as effective as they thought. That uncertainty can lead to mistakes, over-explaining, repeating themselves, even changing their story, because now they're scrambling to figure you out. Composure also gives you the space to see clearly. Emotion clouds judgment. And when tempers flare, people stop thinking strategically. They focus on winning the moment instead of winning the outcome. But when you remain calm, you can assess the situation in real time. You notice details, the shifts in body language, the tone changes, the inconsistencies that someone caught up in the heat of the moment would miss. These details often give you the exact opening you need to take control later. This is why the most effective negotiators, interrogators, and leaders practice calm under pressure. They understand that tone and body language can be just as powerful as words. A slow, steady voice can command more attention than shouting. A deliberate pause can say more than a rushed explanation. And a still posture can project more authority than aggressive movement. These are signals of confidence, and confidence, real, quiet confidence, can be far more intimidating than outward aggression. It's important to remember that composure isn't just about what you're showing. It's also about what you're not giving away. When you stay calm, you reveal nothing about your emotional state, your strategy, or your intentions. The other person is left guessing, and the longer they have to guess, the more unsure they become. This guessing game puts you in control because they can't prepare for what they can't predict. Maintaining composure takes practice, especially when you're dealing with people who know exactly how to push your buttons. You have to train yourself to recognize the physical signs of rising anger or fear, your pulse speeding up, your muscles tensing, your breath shortening, and actively counter them. Deep, steady breathing, grounding your feet, relaxing your shoulders, these are small actions that send a big message: I'm still in control here. Over time, composure becomes more than just a tactic, it becomes part of your presence. People start to sense that you can't be rattled easily, and that in itself changes how they approach you. They're less likely to try to provoke you because they know it won't work. And if they do, they find themselves facing someone who doesn't just withstand pressure, but uses it as a tool. Because in the end, composure isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about controlling it, shaping it, and using it to your advantage without ever letting them see you sweat. Timing is the invisible weapon most people overlook in a confrontation. The urge to act quickly is strong. Adrenaline kicks in, emotions flare, and you want to resolve the situation or defend yourself immediately. But moving too soon can be as damaging as moving too late. The real advantage comes from holding back until the exact moment when the conditions are right, when your move will have the maximum impact with the least resistance. That's what separates a calculated strike from a desperate reaction. Patience isn't about doing nothing. It's about actively preparing while you wait. In the moments when you're holding back, you're not frozen, you're observing, calculating, and positioning yourself. You're looking for patterns in the other person's behavior, noticing when they're strongest and when they start to fade. You're identifying the points when their guard drops, when they slip into overconfidence, or when their own strategy begins to unravel. These moments don't last long, but if you're paying attention, you can seize them. Rushing into a situation before you've read it fully is like stepping onto a battlefield blindfolded. You might be acting with courage, but you're not acting with precision. And precision is what wins, not just in physical confrontations, but in arguments, negotiations, and power struggles of any kind. The person who waits, who holds their ground while the other side makes the first dozen moves, gains a perspective the other will never have. They can see the weaknesses forming before they're exposed. In many cases, people defeat themselves if you give them enough time. Someone who's trying to provoke you might push harder and harder until they overstep, revealing their true motives or exposing a flaw in their argument. Someone in a negotiation might get impatient with your silence and offer more than they originally intended. Someone in a heated discussion might keep talking until they contradict themselves. None of these opportunities exist if you jump in too soon. By waiting, you let them create the conditions for their own loss. This approach requires a level of self-control that can feel uncomfortable. The waiting feels risky. There's a fear that if you don't act now, you'll lose your chance. But that's the trap. Acting at the wrong time because you're uncomfortable with the pause is exactly how you lose the advantage. The key is to trust the process, to know that the longer you wait strategically, the more control you gain. It's not about stalling indefinitely. It's about aligning your move with the moment when it will be undeniable. When that moment comes, your action is sharper, faster, and more decisive because it's been building. You've already mapped the terrain, you know the variables, and you've stripped away the uncertainty. That's why a well-timed move often looks effortless. It's not that it was easy, it's that all the work happened before the visible action. The preparation made the strike look natural, even inevitable. This principle holds whether you're dealing with one person or an entire group. In a public setting, timing your response can shift the entire perception of the exchange. If someone challenges you in front of others and you respond instantly, it can come across as defensive. But if you take a beat, letting their words hang in the air, letting the audience process what was said, your eventual response lands harder. The pause builds anticipation, and anticipation amplifies impact. The beauty of perfect timing is that it often ends the situation in one move. When you act too soon, you might have to keep fighting, keep arguing, keep maneuvering. But when you act at the right moment, your opponent is already too exposed to recover, and there's nothing left to contest. That's the power of patience paired with precision. It doesn't just win the moment, it ends it. Mastering this takes practice. You have to train yourself to resist the pull of urgency and instead lean into observation. You have to become comfortable with silence, with waiting, with letting the other person believe they're in control for just a little longer than they should. And you have to trust that when you finally move, the preparation you've done will make that single move worth far more than anything you could have done by rushing in. Because in the end, the one who waits isn't passive. They're the one quietly shaping the outcome, then claiming it when the time is exactly right. When you strip away the noise, the arguments, and the impulse to react, the heart of "don't fight back, fool them" is about control. Control of yourself, control of the situation, and ultimately control of the outcome. Fighting back in the heat of the moment may feel satisfying, but satisfaction isn't the same as victory. Real victory comes from influence, from shaping events without allowing your emotions to become a weapon against you. And the path to that level of influence isn't through meeting force with force, but through strategy that turns the other person's energy into your advantage. Every conflict, whether it's verbal, psychological, or physical, runs on a predictable cycle. One side acts, the other reacts. The faster and more emotionally charged the reaction, the easier it is to manipulate. That's why the core of this approach is restraint. Restraint isn't weakness. It's the deliberate choice to conserve your power until it will have the greatest impact. It's the discipline to resist being pulled into someone else's timing, emotions, and tactics. When you don't react the way someone expects, you create a space they can't control. That space is where their overconfidence grows, where their mistakes happen, and where they reveal more than they intended. You let them keep playing their game while you watch, learn, and prepare. And in that preparation, you gather everything you need to make a single move that can end the conflict without the chaos they were hoping for. This is why fooling them works. It's not about deception for its own sake, but about using perception to your advantage. People rely on patterns. They assume that when they push, you'll push back. When you break that pattern, you introduce uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people hesitate. It forces them to guess, to question, and in that questioning, they lose clarity. By the time they realize you've been quietly steering the situation, it's too late for them to recover. The strength of this mindset is that it works across every arena of life. In negotiations, it means holding your position until the other side shows their hand. In personal relationships, it means refusing to be drawn into destructive cycles of conflict. In leadership, it means setting the tone and pace of the conversation so that others move in response to you, not the other way around. The core principles remain the same: stay composed, observe more than you speak, choose your moment, and act with precision. The truth is, Anyone can fight back. It takes no special skill to lash out when provoked. But not everyone can control themselves under pressure. Not everyone can remain calm when the room is on fire. Not everyone can wait for the exact second when a single action will be worth more than 100 wasted ones. That's why the person who can do these things stands out. They're not just playing the game, they're rewriting it while the other person is still trying to follow the old rules. And that's the ultimate advantage. You don't just win the moment, you own it. You walk away having protected your energy, your dignity, and your position, while the other person is left wondering how they lost a battle they thought they were winning. You didn't fight back on their terms. You made them fight without realizing they were already losing. That's not just strategy, that's mastery.